You're very cocksure, snarled Sheldon Skaggs. You've evidently forgotten, Sir Knight, that before the Battle of Sodden Hill, the Nilfgaard had advanced across your lands like an iron roller, strewing the land between Marnaddle and Transriver with the corpses of many a gallant fellow like yourself. And it wasn't loudmouthed smart-asses like you who stopped the Nilfgaardians, but the united strengths of Temeria, Redania, Aetern, and Kedwin. Concord and unity, that's what stopped them. Not just that, remarked Radcliffe in a cold, resonant voice. Not just that, Master Skaggs. The dwarf hawked loudly, blew his nose, shuffled his feet, then bowed a little to the wizard. No one is denying the contribution of your fellowship, he said. Shame on he who does not acknowledge the heroism of the Brotherhood of Wizards on Sodden Hill. They stood their ground bravely, shed blood for the common cause, and contributed most eminently to our victory. Dandelion did not forget them in his ballad, and nor shall we. But note that these wizards stood united and loyal on the hill, and accepted the leadership of Vilgefortz of Roggeveen just as we, the warriors of the Four Kingdoms, acknowledged the command of Vizimir of Redania. It's just a pity this solidarity and concord only lasted for the duration of the war, because, with peace, here we are divided again. Vizimir and Foltest are choking each other with customs taxes and trading laws. Demoend of Aetern is bickering with Henselt over the northern marches, while the League of Hengfors and the Thessenids of Cover don't give a toss. And I hear that looking for the old concord amongst the wizards is useless, too. We are not closely knit, we have no discipline and no unity. But Nilfgaard does. Nilfgaard is ruled by Emperor Emir var Emrys, a tyrant and autocrat who enforces obedience with whip, noose and axe. Thundered Baron Villibert. What are you proposing, Sir Dwarf? How are we supposed to close ranks with similar tyranny? And which king, which kingdom, in your opinion, should subordinate the others? In whose hands would you like to see the scepter and knout? What do I care? Replied Skaggs with a shrug. That's a human affair. Whoever you chose to be king wouldn't be a dwarf anyway, or an elf, or even half-elf, added the tall representative of the elder race, his arms still wrapped around the toque-wearing beauty. You even consider quarter elves inferior. That's where it stings, laughed Villibert. You're blowing the same horn as Nilfgaard because Nilfgaard is also shouting about equality, promising you a return to the old order as soon as we've been conquered and they've scythed us off these lands. That's the sort of unity, the sort of equality you're dreaming of, the sort you're talking about and trumpeting. Nilfgaard pays you gold to do it, and it's hardly surprising you love each other so much, the Nilfgaardians being an elven race. Nonsense, the elf said coldly. You talk rubbish, Sir Knight. You're clearly blinded by racism. The Nilfgaardians are human, just like you. That's an outright lie. They're descended from the Black Saea and everyone knows it. Elven blood flows through their veins. The blood of elves. And what flows through yours? The elf smiled derisively. We've been combining our blood for generations, for centuries, your race and mine, and doing so quite successfully. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. You started persecuting mixed relationships less than a quarter of a century ago and, incidentally, not very successfully. So show me a human now who hasn't a dash of Saea, the blood of the elder race. Villibert visibly turned red. Vera Loewenhaupt also flushed. Wizard Radcliffe bowed his head and coughed. And, most interestingly, the beautiful elf in the ermine toque blushed too. We are all children of Mother Earth. The gray-haired druid's voice resounded in the silence. We are children of Mother Nature. And though we do not respect our mother, though we often worry her and cause her pain, though we break her heart, she loves us all. Let us remember that, we who are assembled here in this seat of friendship. And let us not bicker over which of us was here first. Acorn was the first to be thrown up by the waves, and from acorn sprouted the great Bleaverus, the oldest of oaks. Standing beneath its crown, amongst its primordial roots, let us not forget our own brotherly roots, the earth from which these roots grow. Let us remember the words of poet Dandelion's song. Exactly, exclaimed Vera Loewenhaupt. And where is he? He's fled, ascertained Sheldon Skaggs, gazing at the empty place under the oak. Taken the money and fled without saying goodbye. Very elf-like. Dwarf-like, squealed Ironware. Human-like, corrected the tall elf, and the beauty in the toque rested her head against his shoulder. Hey, minstrel, said Mama Lantieri, striding into the room without knocking, the scents of hyacinths, sweat, beer and smoked bacon wafting before her. You've got a guest. Enter, noble gentleman. Dandelion smoothed his hair and sat up in the enormous carved armchair. The two girls sitting on his lap quickly jumped up, covering their charms and pulling down their disordered clothes. The modesty of harlots, thought the poet, was not at all a bad title for a ballad. He got to his feet, fastened his belt and pulled on his doublet, all the while looking at the nobleman standing at the threshold. Indeed, he remarked, you know how to find me anywhere, though you rarely pick an opportune moment. You're lucky I've not yet decided which of these two beauties I prefer. And at your prices, Lantieri, I cannot afford them both. Mama Lantieri smiled in sympathy and clapped her hands. Both girls, a fair-skinned, freckled islander and a dark-haired half-elf, swiftly left the room. The man at the door removed his cloak and handed it to Mama along with a small but well-filled money bag. "Forgive me, master," he said, approaching the table and making himself comfortable. "I know this is not a good time to disturb you, but you disappeared out from beneath the oak so quickly. I did not catch you on the high road as I had intended and did not immediately come across your tracks in this little town. I'll not take much of your time, believe me. They always say that, and it's always a lie," the bard interrupted. "Leave us alone, Lantieri, and see to it that we're not disturbed." "I'm listening, sir." The man scrutinized him. He had dark, damp, almost tearful eyes, a pointed nose and ugly, narrow lips. "I'll come to the point without wasting your time," he declared, waiting for the door to close behind Mama. "Your ballads interest me, master. To be more specific, certain characters of which you sang interest me. I am concerned with the true fate of your ballads' heroes. If I am not mistaken, the true destinies of real people inspire the beautiful work I heard beneath the oak tree. I have in mind little Cyrilla of Sintra, Queen Calanthe's granddaughter." Dandelion gazed at the ceiling, drumming his fingers on the table. "Honored sir," he said dryly, "you are interested in strange matters. You ask strange questions. Something tells me you are not the person I took you to be. And who did you take me to be, if I may ask?" "I'm not sure you may. It depends if you were about to convey greetings to me from any mutual friends. You should have done so initially, but somehow you have forgotten." "I did not forget at all." The man reached into the breast pocket of his sepia-colored velvet tunic and pulled out a money bag somewhat larger than the one he had handed the procuress but just as well filled, which clinked as it touched the table. "We simply have no mutual friends, Dandelion. But might this purse not suffice to mitigate the lack? And what do you intend to buy with this meager purse?" The troubadour pouted. "Mama Lantieri's entire brothel and all the land surrounding it. Let us say that I intend to support the arts, and an artist. In order to chat with the artist about his work. You love art so much, do you, dear sir? Is it so vital for you to talk to an artist that you press money on him before you've even introduced yourself and, in doing so, break the most elementary rules of courtesy?" At the beginning of our conversation, the stranger's dark eyes narrowed imperceptibly. "My anonymity did not bother you, and now it is starting to." "I am not ashamed of my name," said the man, a faint smile appearing on his narrow lips. "I am called Ryance. You do not know me, Master Dandelion, and that is no surprise. You are too famous and well known to know all of your admirers. Yet everyone who admires talents feels he knows you so well that a certain degree of familiarity is permissible. This applies to me, too. I know it is a misconception, so please graciously forgive me." "I graciously forgive you. Then I can count on you agreeing to answer a few questions." "No. No, you cannot," interrupted the poet, putting on airs. "Now, if you will graciously forgive me, I am not willing to discuss the subjects of my work, its inspiration or its characters, fictitious or otherwise. To do so would deprive poetry of its poetic veneer and lead to triteness." "Is that so?" "It certainly is. For example, if, having sung the ballad about the miller's merry wife, I were to announce it's really about Sverka, Miller Loach's wife, and I included an announcement that Sverka can most easily be bedded every Thursday because on Thursdays the miller goes to market, it would no longer be poetry. It would be either rhyming couplets, or foul slander." I understand, Ryance said quickly. "But perhaps that is a bad example. I am not, after all, interested in anyone's peccadillos or sins. You will not slander anyone by answering my questions. All I need is one small piece of information. What really happened to Cyrilla, the Queen of Sintra's granddaughter? Many people claim she was killed during the siege of the town. There are even eyewitnesses to support the claim. From your ballad, however, it would appear that the child survived. I am truly interested to know if this is your imagination at work, or the truth, true or false." "I'm extremely pleased you're so interested." Dandelion smiled broadly. "You may laugh, master, whatever your name is, but that was precisely what I intended when I composed the ballad. I wish to excite my listeners and arouse their curiosity." "True or false?" repeated Ryance coldly. "If I were to give that away I would destroy the impact of my work. Goodbye, my friend. You have used up all the time I can spare you, and two of my many inspirations are waiting out there, wondering which of them I will choose." Ryance remained silent for a long while, making no move to leave. He stared at the poet with his unfriendly, moist eyes, and the poet felt a growing unease. A merry din came from the bawdy house's main room, punctuated from time to time by high-pitched feminine giggles. Dandelion turned his head away, pretending to show derisive haughtiness but, in fact, he was judging the distance to the corner of the room and the tapestry showing a nymph sprinkling her breasts with water poured from a jug. "Dandelion," Ryance finally spoke, slipping his hand back into the pocket of his sepia-colored tunic. "Answer my questions, please. I have to know the answer. It's incredibly important to me." "To you, 2. Believe me, because if you answer of your own free will then what? A hideous grimace crept over Ryance's narrow lips. Then I won't have to force you to speak. Now listen, you scoundrel. Dandelion stood up and pretended to pull a threatening face. I loathe violence and force, but I'm going to call Mama Lantieri in a minute and she will call a certain Gruzila who fulfills the honorable and responsible role of bouncer in this establishment. He is a true artist in his field. He'll kick your arse so hard you'll soar over the town roofs with such magnificence that the few people passing by at this hour will take you for a Pegasus. Ryance made an abrupt gesture and something glistened in his hand. Are you sure? He asked. You'll have time to call her. Dandelion had no intention of checking if he would have time. Nor did he intend to wait. Before the stiletto had locked in Ryance's hand, Dandelion had taken a long leap to the corner of the room, dived under the nymph tapestry, kicked open a secret door and rushed headlong down the winding stairs, nimbly steering himself with the aid of the well-worn banisters. Ryance started after him, but the poet was sure of himself. He knew the secret passage like the back of his hand, having used it numerous times to flee creditors, jealous husbands and furious rivals from whom he had, from time to time, stolen rhymes and tunes. He knew that after the third turning he would be able to grope for a revolving door, behind which there was a ladder leading down to the cellar. He was sure that his persecutor would be unable to stop in time, would run on and step on a trapdoor through which he would fall and land in the pigsty. He was equally sure that, bruised, covered in shit and mauled by the pigs, his persecutor would give up the chase. Dandelion was mistaken, as was usually the case whenever he was too confident. Something flashed a sudden blue behind his back and the poet felt his limbs grow numb, lifeless and stiff. He couldn't slow down for the revolving door. His legs wouldn't obey him. He yelled and rolled down the stairs, bumping against the walls of the little corridor. The trapdoor opened beneath him with a dry crack and the troubadour tumbled down into the darkness and stench. Before thumping his head on the dirt floor and losing consciousness, he remembered Mama Lantieri saying something about the pigsty being repaired. The pain in his constricted wrists and shoulders, cruelly twisted in their joints, brought him back to his senses. He wanted to scream but couldn't. It felt as though his mouth had been stuck clay. He was kneeling on the dirt floor with a creaking rope hauling him up by his wrists. He tried to stand, wanting to ease the pressure on his shoulders, but his legs, too, were tied together. Choking and suffocating, he somehow struggled to his feet, helped considerably by the rope which tugged mercilessly at him.